So the supplies needed to begin this next craft are as follows. You're going to need one of these large beware signs. I have this one from last year, but I believe they're back again at the Dollar Tree. You're also going to need one of these MDF do-it-yourself signage from the Dollar Tree as well. And I have here a pack of sponge brushes. I have this little putty spatula, some spackle, a pair of scissors, and some chalk paint. So to begin, I'm going to start off by giving that little ribbon hanger a snip and tossing it to the side because we're not going to be needing any more. And I'm going to plug up those holes using my Dollar Tree spackle before moving on to paint it. So I'm going to take a pea-sized amount just with my finger and I'm going to plug up those holes as such. Just put a little dollop in each hole and then I'm going to spread it with my little scraping spatula from the Dollar Tree as well. And I'm going to flip it over to the other side because sometimes it seeps to the other side. And that's it. This says that it's quick drying and I don't even think you have to sand it. I could just paint right over it when I'm done. So this stuff really lives up to its expectations. It really is quick drying and it's perfect for people like me who are too impatient to wait for stuff to dry because I have zero tolerance for waiting. So now I'm just going to go right on ahead and hit it with some of this white paint. And here my tools of choice is a sponge brush. I'm just pouring the paint into the palette and I'm going to be using the sponge brush to apply the paint, and I do apologize for being temporarily out of frame. So I'm just going to go and slap that coat of paint right on the board. No rhyme or reason. There's no method to my madness here. I'm just going to try to get as much coverage as I can. Now that I've given my board some dry time, it's time to move on to the next step. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be trying my hand at creating some faux shiplap lines, and I'm going to be utilizing this little level as a ruler and my Sharpie marker. And I'm going to draw planks beginning with those little grooved in notches that are on the side, that scalloped edge, and I'm going to use that as my focal point to draw my lines. So here I'm just running my Sharpie marker from that top notch to the bottom notch and creating my planks. And I just started on the left side, working my way over, and that's all there is to it. So here's what I got going on after drawing in those planks. I know it looks kind of crazy right now, but don't worry, we're going to fix it. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be taking this little paintbrush and I'm barely going to be dipping just the tip inside the jar. And I'm even going to dab some of that paint off too because I want the brush to be as dry as possible. So basically I'm just going to be dry brushing this and to try to tone down some of the harshness of the lines to make it look more uniform. So to avoid all that glitter fallout from the front of the sign where it said beware, I just slapped some of this craft paper on the back to make it look more uniform and finished. So now what's next to do is I have this here leather strap from a purse that I no longer am using, and I never did get to utilize this strap, so I'm going to be using it on this craft. So what I plan to do is to take equal pieces of this leather strap and attach one on each side of the board. So here's the two equal pieces of that leather strap cut down to size, and now it's just a matter of tacking them down to each side of the board. So I drew myself a guideline on both sides of the board with my pencil, and the camera doesn't really pick it up well, but you get the gist of it. So it's just basically, a guide to give myself so that, my straps come out evenly. So now I'm going to form a bead of hot glue right along that line for proper placement of my leather straps. And I'm just going to check to make sure it's on the right side and hold it down for a couple of seconds. to tack down that strap, and that's all she wrote. Now I'm going to flip the board over to the other side, and I'm going to add a bead of glue to that little tab that's sticking up. And I do apologize again for being temporarily out of frame. Sometimes I get too focused and concentrated on my crafts that I don't pay attention to the camera placement, and I don't really come to notice it until it's time to upload the videos. So I apologize for that. So I'm just showing you here that I added that glue, and now I'm holding it down for placement, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So here's a look at what I got going on after tacking down those leather straps to both ends of the board. And so now I'm ready to move on to the next step. So excuse me while I pour some of this black ink chalk paint into my little palette board over here in preparation for throwing a coat of paint onto my little DIY decor sign from the Dollar Tree. Now these little decor wooden plaques, if you will, from the Dollar Tree, they're a DIYer's dream, and they're meant to be painted because they lend themselves so very well to any kind of paint, whether it's chalk, acrylic, you name it, whatever you choose to use on them, it lends itself very well. So after giving my board some dry time, I decided to come in with some detailing by going over it with this little metallic marker that I found at the Dollar Tree, which is really cool. So I just created some faux stitching around my lettering just by going in and drawing little dashes along the perimeter of each individual letter until I reach the end of my sign. So now that my stitch detailing is complete, all that's left to do is to attach my decor signage onto the backboard simply by adding a little bit of Gorilla Hot Glue onto the back and applying it to my backing as such. So let's go ahead and finish out this project, guys. I have my glue gun all fired up and ready to go. And so I'm simply just going to be using some of this here Gorilla glue sticks. And that's what I'm going to be using to tack down this project. But feel free to use wood glue or E6000 or a combination of both, whatever suits your fancy. But I find that these Gorilla Hot glue sticks are just fine for these kind of projects, and I'm trying to go through as quickly as possible before letting this glue set up, and I'm going to apply it to my board and call it a finished project. And there you have it. That's all she wrote.